7:16, welcome back to BT Thursday morning live shot from Century Plaza Hotel and Spa. And joining us on the BT couch, Grand Chief Stewart Phillip, and we wanted to bring you in, welcome to you, to address many important topics that are happening right now. One of the hot topics that just happened yesterday, the opposition bid to have Jody Wilson-Raybould testify a second time in the SNC-Lavalin affair. That was blocked by the House of Commons Justice Committee. Your initial reaction to not being able to hear this MP a second time?
Well, needless to say, I was absolutely disappointed, but I wasn't surprised. It's a typical sleazy tactic of the Liberal Party of Canada. They're trying to kill this story. They're trying to continue to silence Jody Wilson-Raybould, and I think it represents a loss to all Canadians not to hear her respond to a lot of the notions that have come out of Gerald Butts' testimony and Michael Wernick. Jody could have repudiated a lot of those statements, and she wasn't given the opportunity to do that, so it's very disappointing.
Well, she's got a voice in many respects, and yourself, along with the Union of B.C. Indian Chiefs, you stood in solidarity with this particular MP, and when you have moments like this, I think about, well, what makes you respect her? And there was an instance where you were up against her running for regional chief. What did you learn in that situation, because you ended up supporting her?
Well, I've known Jody for a very long time, and we did both compete for the regional chief position. I was in that race to win, and was pretty confident I was going to become the regional chief. And I didn't really know to any great detail what a powerful force Jody was. And midway through the campaign, I realized that she was the most qualified candidate to represent BC's chiefs, and I began to support her and help her.
What stood out when you said she was the most qualified candidate?
Her preparation. She's an absolute workhorse. Her platform, her materials were just top drawer. Her articulation of the issues, it was amazing to see her. She's so knowledgeable, she's so intelligent, that being a former Crown prosecutor, the only thing that I saw that was weakness is she spoke too fast. And I told her, I said, what you have to say is important, and people need to hear it. And you need to slow down. And she gave me a funny, quizzical look, like wondering, what's going on here? We're running against each other. Mm-hmm. And I think, perhaps in the beginning she didn't trust where I was coming from, but she began to realize that I was genuinely supporting her candidacy, and of course she went on to win.
And you continue to support her, obviously, in this case right here. Quick comments on the relationship with the First Nations communities across this country, given the stance with the Liberals to block having a voice come in a second time. Has this done, I guess, the significance of the damage this has done? Well,
I think it's, it's certainly been a cumulative effect. As we recall, Prime Minister Trudeau made a very passionate speech in the House of Commons February 14th, Valentine's Day, 2018, promising to bring forward legislation, recognition and implementation framework legislation that would embrace the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, the TRC Calls to Action, Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And then somewhere in the late fall, he casually said, well, we're just going to put that on hold. We're going to put it on the back burner. There was huge disappointment with that. And a lot of the promises and commitments he made just simply evaporated through his time in office. So the disappointment was increasing with the Liberal government, and we were absolutely shocked when Jody was treated in the fashion she was, and dumped and shuffled off to Veteran Affairs. It was just...
So it's been a big issue with the communities, and obviously you passionately speak about it. There's something else you've been very open about, and it's a personal plea with the opioid crisis, because it's impacted you and your family. You experienced a great loss with your son Kenny last August 2018. Tell us about his situation, your loss, and why you've chosen to speak up in such a powerful way.
Well, you know, needless to say, Kenny was my oldest son. I recall when he was born, the day he was born, I'd left the hospital and I was going back to the community, and I had to pull over, and I just broke down and cried. I was so happy that I had a son, and he had that special place in my heart, and he struggled like myself for at least 20 years with substance abuse issues, and he attended at least half a dozen treatment centers throughout the province. A lot of good people were there to help him and support him. He had a very strong network in the recovery world through the AA programs and he was really had an incredible personality. People loved him, and yet he graduated from Round Lake just a few weeks before he passed away. And of course I was at the grad, and we were just happy. We thought, at long last we've turned the corner on this. And he met a young lady that had committed her life to sobriety, and we thought, this is perfect. He has a real chance now to move forward in his life. He was involved and almost completed an apprenticeship program for auto mechanics, which was a passion in his life. And then he went up to Grand Prairie with this young lady, and you know, I speculate they had a bit of a spat, and his fallback was to go out and drink, and he did that, and then of course got involved with drugs, and the drugs that he took were laced with carfentanil, and he was by himself, and he overdosed, and RCMP found him in his hotel room.
So we have a loss of life, but in this, and we have about a minute left, Chief, I want to cover off a very, there's a lot of courage to share this story, and when we look at the statistics of what is happening, 1,489 people died in BC alone, according to the BC Coroner Service, with overdoses. You want to see a public inquiry to change this trend. You don't believe this is the new norm. What are the questions we need to ask to change this so families don't have to go through it?
Well, I reject this notion of it being the new norm, and I suppose I have issues with harm reduction. I think governments need to prioritize the opioid crisis federally and provincially at all levels, and invest the resources necessary to bring forward scores of treatment centers, aftercare, detox centers. There's simply not enough resources or facilities available. There's virtually nothing for youth in the province of British Columbia. It's shameful, it's unacceptable, and it's costing lives. And the minimalist approach of governments is absolutely unacceptable. People are literally dying, not only in the big cities, but in small communities, and governments need to step up to the plate and take responsibility. Families need to take ownership of this issue and not try and conceal, you know, the passing of their loved ones as a consequence of an overdose. We need to be public. We need to speak out. We need to organize.
We need to share this information. While you're doing that for us today, I commend you for coming on here with the courage to share this story, and appreciate all of your insights on all of this, Chief. Thank you very much. Listen, we're going to do a quick check-in with weather. Russell